Welcome to Conversations with Buddy. This week, we decided to explore video podcasting, so if you'd like to watch instead of just listen this week, feel free to check the show notes for a link to the YouTube version of this episode. Good morning, and welcome to Conversations with Buddy. Coming to you live from the Rec Podcast Studio in Kaiser, Oregon. I've got a great guest this morning. I can't wait to introduce her. By the way, we do these podcasts every Friday morning, and we drop those, and we're hoping that the story or stories of these people impact somebody, and we hope that somebody is you. So today, I want to welcome my guest, Marjorie Dudley. Good morning.
Morning.
Hi. How are you?
I'm awesome.
You're
I'm
awesome.
excited.
Well, tell me why you're excited and why are you awesome? I want to hear.
Well, I think the world of you, so that's one reason I'm excited.
Thank you.
I'm excited because I'm here in Florida and you are there in Kaiser, Oregon, and we found a way, or really you and Camden found a way to make this work.
Yes.
I'm just excited to be here, and I'm a little excited in anticipation of what sort of questions you're going to ask me.
They're going to be good ones too, by the way. It's going to be fun.
Obviously.
Well, I'm excited, and I know that you are actually from, well, actually, we're going to get into that in a moment. So I'm going to introduce you a little bit, tell a little bit of a story about you, and then we're going to go into each area and just talk about those to learn more about you and your story. And we have a lot to cover, so it should be fun.
Okay.
All right. So here's what I know about you so far. You're a wife. And by the way, how long have you guys been married?
We just celebrated 14 years in October.
Tell me your husband's name.
Jason.
So 14 years that you guys have been married. And we'll dig into that because I want to know, and this part of your story is we'll get to know when you guys met, how you guys got married. I love this. You're a karate dance mom to York and Averly.
Yep.
We'll talk about those ages here in a moment. You mentioned that you're an introverted only child, but then your dad got remarried and became an extroverted child of 4 or 5 siblings total, right?
4. I was the youngest of 4.
You're the youngest of 4. You are a hobby baker. I don't know that term, but I think that sounds good because I love to bake as well. And I'll be interested to hear what your favorite thing to bake is. You are a fellow believer. I think you grew up Catholic. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And still am. Yep.
Still am. Cool. And then lastly that I know about you is you're a coach. You work for Southwestern Consulting. You've been coaching for around 6 years. So that might be the last thing we talk about. So let's just dive in real quick and just talk about maybe where you grew up. And I know you moved to Salem. You lived in Salem for a while, then now you're in Florida. But so where'd you grow up? What was life like where you grew up? And how'd you migrate to Salem and then to Florida?
Oh, that's a pretty cool story, actually. So I grew up about 40 minutes north of Detroit, Michigan, and very like suburbia, typical kind of Midwest. Nothing too special. It was just a pretty average upbringing. I went to college on the west side of the state, aptly named Western Michigan University, and in the middle of my freshman year, I saw a post, like a sign, like an 8x11 printed sign on the elevator door that said, our student internships, average student makes $8,000 in the summer.
Wow.
Now, mind you, this is 1998.
Seems like a lot of money.
So, yeah, for a kid now, $8,000 is still pretty good money.
Yeah.
So 1998, 8,000 in a summer was an insane amount of money. And I was like, I like money. And I grew up, my dad would pay me to shine his shoes. I got paid to clean my parents' house. Like I was always looking I had a job right at 14 at McDonald's, a furniture store. I worked for a Buick and Volkswagen dealership. Like I always was doing things to earn money. So when I saw $8,000 in a summer, I was like, let's go.
Heck, I'm in.
So I went to the right? And it is actually kind of to jump ahead in the story because you touched on this. It was an internship with Southwestern Company. So I'm now with Southwestern Consulting. So you'll see the tie in there.
Wow. Okay. I can't wait.
So I went to Yeah, I went to the informational interview and they said, hey, this isn't for everybody. It's really hard. We're going to teach you how to run a retail educational business, knocking on people's doors and selling, this time books. Like CDs were just become like CD-ROM. Okay, this is dating me, but CD-ROM was not super popular. So we were knocking on people's doors selling books, not quite encyclopedias. In fact, actually, if see that right there, I
Yep.
sold those.
Okay.
So I found a vintage copy on Facebook Marketplace and had to get them. So I said, okay, let's do this. I told my mom. She was super supportive. Several years later, when I asked why she was super supportive, she said, well, you weren't really ever a finisher. Ouch. Like I wouldn't finish what I would start. She said, I knew if anyone was going to help you finish, it was going to be these people. So I was like, whoa. I found that out years later. But when I told my dad, the conversation went, hey, Dad, I'm going to sell books door to door. And he's like, where? And part of it is you don't know where you're going until like right before you leave. So I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, where are you going to live? And you live with host families. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, what guarantee do you have that you'll make any money? And I was like, there is none.
Sweet.
So it was, yeah. So my dad, protective dad of daughter, and I'm his only daughter. So even though when he got remarried, there was three others, but he actually was like, no, you're not. And I was like, yes, I am. And that happened a few times, and then he actually hung up on me.
Wow.
So I went and sold books that summer in Salt Lake City, Utah. We did, in fact, knock on doors and find a host family, believe it or not. And it was an amazing experience. And I think I made about $12,500 that summer.
No kidding.
I won a trip to Mexico. They call it the Sizzler trip. And I was hooked. I did think it was going to be easy thereafter. It was actually harder. But I ended up selling 3 more summers with the Southwestern Company and knocking on doors and crying a lot and selling some books and getting in good shape and eating a lot of Oreo sandwiches and doing all the things that, are wild. So while my friends are partying in the summer, I was sweating it up, getting mosquito bites and going around neighborhoods, slinging books.
Just real quick, what caused you to be so motivated? I mean, that's interesting. Was it that your dad started you out early on, paying you to shiny shoes or clean the house, whatever? Is that what motivated you, or are you just wired that way?
I do think I liked the semi-instant gratification. Like you do something and then you get paid for it. So there wasn't a long tail delayed gratification. There was a little bit, like you have to do it first. But I did like seeing that, kind of Pavlov's dog or like the mouse with the cookie, right? I just, if I do this, then I get money. And then I always had a little bit of a, back then kids went to the mall. I know kids don't really go to the mall now, but,
yeah.
Then you have some spending money to go to the mall. I always babysat. So I was always spending money probably as quick as I was earning it. And so I had to refill the piggy bank, so to speak.
That's awesome. Okay. So how did you get from Michigan to Oregon? So that's probably the next gap in your life that we can talk about.
Well, that's the bridge, right? Because I sold books. My first summer was Salt Lake City, Utah. My second summer, I went to Tri-Cities, Washington. And when I was in Tri-Cities, I had a friend who was selling in the Lake Oswego, Portland area.
Okay. So
at the end of the summer, I went over to Portland and we bummed around Portland for a week. So as a 20-year-old kid, it was awesome, maybe 21. Because if I recall, this actually even ties into meeting Jason, my husband, too. But we went to this bar in Portland and played Golden Tea at, 11 in the morning and doing the things that 21-year-old kids do when they just made a lot of money and don't really have anything else to do. So I had really liked the Portland area. And I also happen to have an aunt and uncle who are still in Vancouver. So I was a little bit familiar with the area. Sold 2 more summers, Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Graduated with a graphic design degree and was thinking about what are some cool cities where you could actually find a graphic design job. So I actually initially picked Seattle. and couldn't find a job, and found a sales job because of my door-to-door background. Sales managers were kind of chomping at the bit to hire me. Found a sales job in Portland and was looking for that Golden Tea bar that I had been to 3-ish years prior. And so I was working for a payroll company in the Portland market, but my territory was Salem. So I lived in actually Vancouver, and the office was in Tigard, kind of right at that 217-99 I-75 triangle. And then my territory was in Salem. And there was a gal there, and she's like, hey, we're all going out to the Gypsy. I don't know if you ever heard of the Gypsy in Portland, but it's gone now. It's a parking lot now because apparently there's more money in parking lots in Portland. But I was like, yeah, I mean, I didn't really have any friends. I just moved here. And so I was like, I'll go with you guys. And I walked in.
You are an extrovert, by the way. You said you're an introvert. I don't see it. So keep going.
Well, an introvert is how you recharge.
Okay, fair. That is true.
Yeah. So I do recharge in solitude, and but I do, you're easy to talk to. So that's the easy part.
Okay. Got it.
So I went to this bar, I walked in, and I had like, eureka. It was literally the Golden Tea bar from 3 years back. And Jason, my now husband, was our bartender.
No way.
Yeah. So we proceeded to have a lot of fun. And as I was walking out, Jason said, well, what are you ladies doing tonight? And I was like, I don't know. And I wrote my number on a cocktail napkin. Again, this is so old. Like, we were not carrying cell phones in our pocket.
That's funny.
This is 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So slid my cocktail napkin across the bar, and he actually called me.
Wow.
And then we've talked almost every day since then. So
that's so cool.
I got out to the Portland area for thinking I was looking for a graphic design job and finding a sales job, and then I never left sales. I kind of said adios to graphic design, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, there's probably more money in sales than graphic design, I'm guessing, as long as you're motivated, excited, and you love people. I mean, you obviously love people, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Most of them, yeah. We can all see that. Well, this is cool. So you met Jason. That's awesome. Okay, so then your territory is Salem, which is kind of where our connection is, I guess, really. But so then you moved to Salem. Do you and Jason get married right away?
I was commuting. No. So I was commuting from Portland, from Vancouver initially, to Salem every single day. And it was about a 90-minute commute because, you're trying to get down there in the morning. We all know what that traffic's like, or if you're in the area, I had a really cool sales manager at the time. He's like, we got to help you at least get on the other side of the city. So I got to Tigard, and that commute wasn't actually that bad, especially back then. Traffic has grown tremendously in the last decade, 2 decades. But so I moved to Tigard. Jason, actually, 1 month into us dating, Jason drops a little bomb on me, and he says, hey, I'm going to move to Phoenix, Arizona. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we just started dating. And he's like, no, I got to do it. And he did have to do it for his reasons. And so I just remember being like really nonchalant I was just like, okay, we'll figure it out. So he and I actually dated long distance for 9 months. Wow. And I actually attribute that to a lot of our success in marriage because, dating long distance, they say it never works. But I think the reason it never works is because it actually brings to the surface all of the flaws and pitfalls. Right. Like, you have to talk. You can't just like perpetually be going out on dates and, watching movies and doing whatever. You actually, like, the only way you can have a relationship is by talking to the person. So we did a lot of talking for hours and hours and multiple times a day for 9 months. And I just knew he was my person. I wouldn't have said it at the time quite like that. But a funny story, I dated a guy right before, and I could always see my wedding photo. And there was always like how when you're watching a show and they can't show the person, they blur out the face. Yeah. So there was always a blurred out face in the groom photo. And the second I met Jason, his face fit in the groom photo.
That's
and
so cool.
I didn't, it was actually in hindsight that I realized all that, but we dated long distance. Yeah. I masterminded a plan to get him to move back to Portland, which he did. And then we dated another 3 years before getting engaged
Yeah.
or getting married, I guess. Maybe
Yeah.
another 2 years before getting engaged and 3
Yeah.
years before getting married.
Right. Very cool. So you guys get married. You guys stay in the Portland area then at that point in time?
So that's when before we were married, I bought a little house in Lafayette, Oregon. Before Lafayette was and Dundee and all that was this
Yeah.
amazing wine country.
Yep.
They were just cheap houses. My first house was 170,000, 1,200 square foot on this beautiful corner lot. Like I wish I'd held on to it. That's like one of my very few regrets. Dang it. That's like, I looked it up on Zillow or so. I know Zillow is not the biggest truth teller, but it
Yeah.
was like 300,000 now. And I was, what did I do?
Yeah.
But, bought a little house in Lafayette, and then I can't remember if it was right before or right after, but then we bought a house in West Salem.
Yeah.
And I really liked, I was kind of jealous of everybody because I did a lot of work in Salem. That was my territory. And I was jealous. I was involved in the Chamber of Commerce and all that. And I was a little bit jealous of all the people that lived in Salem and worked in Salem. And here I was commuting back to Lafayette every day. So we bought in West Salem and then ended up moving to East Salem, which was Jason's childhood home. And so we spent 9 years living on a 5-acre.
Jason grew up in Salem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's an interesting part of the story. So, okay, this makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So he was commuting. He was living at that house. His mom had passed away, so his dad was living alone. So Jason actually moved back in with his dad and was commuting up to Portland to the Gypsy to work while I was working in, or my office was in Portland, but I was commuting down to Salem to work. Right. So we were kind of doing all this path. Yeah. We ran the math too. We kind of worked the numbers. We actually think he might have been the bartender the day that I visited the bar 3 or 4 years prior, because that was his shift.
That's funny.
So that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But we ended up moving into his childhood home, and it was a beautiful 5-acre piece of property, right? Like 10 minutes east of that Costco on 22.
Yep.
And
which doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
Well, we sold it, so it exists for somebody, but I'm saying you can't get too many more of those.
I'm saying the Costco doesn't exist there. It moved.
Oh, the Costco doesn't exist. Yeah, I had no idea.
It moved out south off of Kubler.
That's gotta be fun.
It's probably twice as big. Anyway, little side story.
Really?
There, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know that happened after we left.
Yeah.
So we've been gone about 18 months now, but we had this great property. They custom built the house. It had a beautiful view of the sunset. Our neighbor had a big pond. We had cows. We had chickens.
Wow.
It was a great 9 years. We lived there until, so what's Averly now? She's 12. So we lived there until she was 9.5, 10.
Yeah.
And York was born in that house, and it was a great property for 9 years. We really love it, and it holds a special place in our heart.
That's cool. A couple things I didn't know. You guys were farmers. I mean, you guys have chickens and cows and stuff, so that's cool. Let's talk real quick. I know you moved to Florida, but you have 2 kids, Averly and York. Averly, as you said, she's 12. She's in 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
York he's 5?
5, yeah.
And there's a story behind this. So walk us through the story. Then what I want to hear is kind of your migration to Florida and what would make someone move to Florida. This is interesting. This is completely across the country. So it's a big deal.
Completely.
I want to hear all about that.
Almost diagonally. So I found out I was pregnant with York in 2016. And when I was about 13 weeks pregnant, I was feeling really tired and my leg was hurting. And I went to get a massage. There's a great lady who does massage in the area. And I was just telling her that. And she's like, I don't want to scare you, but that sounds like a blood clot.
Oh.
No way. I woke up the next morning. Now, mind you, this had been progressing. I'd been noticing it, but I just thought any woman who's been pregnant, you're like, hey, that sounds pretty normal. And I'd had a fairly rough pregnancy with Averly too, a lot of nausea and all that fun stuff. But I woke up the next morning, and in our master suite, my side of the bed to the bathroom was probably 30 feet at most. And I was in excruciating pain, in tears, just walking that far.
Wow.
And Jason said, you need to go to the doctor. So my father-in-law actually took me. They ultrasounded my leg, and I had a blood clot from my knee to my uterus. I didn't know it was that big at the time because they don't really tell you. Doctors are funny. Anybody's got a lot of medical stuff, they kind of keep you in the dark.
Yeah.
So I had to go to the hospital, make sure they did a scan to make sure it wasn't in my lungs and going to cause like a pulmonary embolism. So they're like, you're not pregnant, are you? And I'm like, yes, I am. And so then I had to sign away, like, we're going to radiate you. And the suspicion now, so York was, like I said, 13 weeks. At 20 weeks, we went for the gender ultrasound, and it was taking forever.
Yeah.
And Jason was with me, and the second the ultrasound tech left, I looked at him and I said, something's wrong. And he's like, no, it's fine. And I'm like, something's wrong. So the doctor comes in and she goes, how far along are you? And I said, 20 weeks. And she had said, are you sure? And I was sure because I actually went to a beautiful organization in Salem. I don't know if you're familiar with Hope Pregnancy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Hope Pregnancy Resource Clinic.
Yeah.
Love them. They are angels walking on earth, I swear. But doctors a lot of times don't want to see you until you're at least 12 weeks. And so I went to them to confirm that I was in fact pregnant. And fun fact, the earlier the ultrasound, the more accurate it is. So I knew absolutely that I was at that time 7 weeks, that the blood clot was 13 weeks, and that I was now in fact 20 weeks. And they said, are you sure? I said, why? What does it look like? And they said, you looks like you're 17 weeks. His size is 17 weeks.
Gotcha.
Okay, what does that mean? And they're like, I said, it's not good, is it? She's like, it's not good. So they wanted to see me every 2 weeks. And basically every 2 weeks that I would come in, he would only grow 1 week.
Really?
And Jason was with me at every single appointment, but he had to miss one. Oh, I'm going to get choked up. So the one appointment he missed, York didn't grow at all. And I looked at the doctor and I said, what does that mean? He said, he's probably going to be a stillbirth. And so I just remember going into the bathroom and like sliding down the wall and just crying in a heap.
Yeah.
So we prayed a lot. We had a really great blog at the time called Prayers for Shrimpy that people were following all over the country. And I actually made friends in the area. I don't know if you know Shauna Young in the area. She's actually a realtor in the area.
I do.
We became really close friends because she was praying for us long before we ever actually met. But I tell you, York was a little trooper, and slow but mighty. We went to the next ultrasound, and I was irritated that they were even doing a formal ultrasound because I'm like, he's gone. And then she goes, and there's his heartbeat. And I was like, what? Like I was fully expecting, we were told in the last appointment and all this, there's his heartbeat. And I was like, what? So a lot of tears, a lot of praying, a lot of updating family, a lot of pouring my heart out on this blog because, sometimes it's easier to write things than to say them. And he just kept plugging along. And our doctor in Salem shortly thereafter said, you need to go up to Portland. We cannot handle you. So I started seeing OHSU, and OHSU said, we need you to have a bag packed because we may not let you come home at some point. And I didn't believe him because I felt like if I succumbed to packing a bag, I'm like willing him to come early. So I refused to pack a bag. And it was Averly's birthday. So February 15th of 2017. And I had an appointment in Portland. They were always on Wednesdays. And they said, you cannot go home. And I said, you don't understand. It's my daughter's 7th birthday. I have to go home.
Yeah.
They're like, we cannot let you go home. And I said, well, what if I go against medical advice? And they're like, well, technically you can do that, but here's all the reasons you should not do that. So again, I cried some more and I yelled, and the doctor was wonderful. He's like, you can yell at me. Here's some tissue. I'll take it. But they kept me there, and I was under constant monitoring, and York was still kicking. And Averly at this point was so excited. Like a little backstory, she had prayed and prayed and prayed for a sibling, and that did not happen. She was 7 years old. That did not happen for many years. And I would just always tell her, just pray. I'm not the one you need to ask. You need to ask God.
Amen.
And so she prayed. And so there was really this rough time that I remember texting a really good girlfriend of mine. I feel like we got a take back baby.
Wow.
That was literally the text I sent her. And she was like, a take back baby. And she, sends me the crying emoji. And I'm flipping through TV. And, we lived out in the country, so we didn't always get all the stations.
Yeah.
And there was this random preacher on some random channel that we never get. And he was giving a sermon on, I believe it's Romans 8:9 or something like that. But God's gifts and his call are irrevocable.
Hmm.
And I was flipping so fast, I passed it, but I heard it. And I went back and I was like, did you just give me that message? Like, your gifts are irrevocable. You gave us this gift. And I had this intense peace that this gift was not being taken back. So we get to the hospital on Averly's birthday. They don't let me go home. Send the in-laws and my mom and everybody to go celebrate with her and do my best to talk with her. And she's sad, and I get it. And we're just praying for more time. At this week, I'm 28 weeks pregnant, which is not a great time to have a baby. It's not, especially one that is actually only measuring about 20 weeks in size.
Oh.
So they're saying to me things like, they're saying things like, well, we might not have tubing small enough to give him the IVs that he needs. So it's not, so one of the things he had going for him is because his age, your lungs develop based on your age, your gut and GI health and all those things develop on your size. So his gut was in bad shape. His lungs were actually proving to be a little bit better. I was able to get a steroid shot to help him out. And just one day shy of being 29 weeks pregnant, I was waking up in the hospital bed and I was about to put a bite of food in my mouth. Actually, I did get one bite of food in my mouth. I didn't even chew yet. And the doctor says, we're prepping you to deliver today. He needs to come out. 29 weeks and the size of a 21-week-year-old, or 21 week. And so I had that blood clot, so I was on blood thinners. So they actually needed to wait 12 hours to do the surgery. So they finally get me into C-section. So it's an emergent C-section, but it's an urgent, but not an emergency C-section. Jason's with me. My mom was there. My in-laws were nearby. So like all the family was close. They do the C-section. I have a problem with anesthesia and it wears off me really quickly. So I expressed that concern. And by the end of the C-section, I was feeling what they were doing. And it was taking extra time because I was bleeding a lot from all the blood thinners. They whisk York away, and I don't even know if he's alive. I have no idea if I just delivered, excuse my crassness, but a dead baby. And that's how it felt, that raw and that like, what is it? So Jason comes back in and I'm like, well, what? Like, nobody told me. Nobody goes like, hey, your baby's alive. Jason, and I actually looked at Jason and had to ask him, like, is he, so they got a picture. He was there. It was very touch and go for his first few weeks in the NICU. He wasn't tolerating foods. He got a thing called necrotizing enterocolitis, which we now know is actually either caused or increased by the formula fortifiers that they give you in the NICU. So that's a whole nother story. But necrotizing enterocolitis can be very fatal or lose these balls, obstructions. He had a problem keeping his oxygen saturation. And basically, he was in there for 3.5 months. So in that time, I was still doing what I'm doing now, but I took a way step back. I would work 8 to noon. I would drive up to OHSU. I would spend noon to 5 with York, which if you ever have had a baby, which I know you have too, right?
2, yep.
Babies need to be held more than 5 hours a day.
Right.
So he actually exhibited a lot of like emotional challenges because he was a baby in the NICU, basically not being held. So we finally get him home at 3.5 months, and I have to fight to get him home. And because he's still not taking bottle feeds fully. So I have to say, I remember just feeling like emotionally, this is not sustainable for him to to be ignored 19 hours a day. Not that the nurses were ignoring him, but they're not there to hold babies. They're there to like keep babies alive. So 19 hours a day, he's not held. He's crying constantly. It's taking a toll on his weight gain. It's taking a toll on his emotional health. So I fight to get him home. I'm like, we need to get him home, whether he's on a tube feed or not. And so we get him home on his tube feed, and they teach me. They teach me how to do, like, he had a tube go up his nose and into his stomach.
Wow.
And again, we were still fortifying with formula. We didn't know that that was bad for him. So he was also vomiting around the clock. So while I have Averly at home, even though York's not getting enough of my time, Averly's not getting enough of my time because I'm getting home at dinner time. She's a 7-year-old kid. She's got about a 7:30 bedtime.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing Averly for 1 hour a day, and she's having a hard time emotionally because mom's gone. So it was very tough times, but Averly, man, she just grew into this big sister role. And when her brother came home, I mean, the two were random strangers will say things like, I could just see the love that they have for each other.
That's sweet.
That people just see it. She just, there is just truly a kindred spirit. Now he's a little bit at the age he bugs her sometimes, but oh man,
siblings, yeah. But they love each other.
Their love is just incredible. Yep. So we fought to get him home. The formula was causing reflux. The reflux was causing vomiting. The vomiting was creating aspiration. So then he actually had to be on in-home oxygen 24/7. So we had him 22 hours a day tube fed and 24/7 oxygen. So we would pack oxygen tanks, and we would pack his feeding backpack, and we would go to Mass at Queen of Peace in Salem, and we'd be carrying the tank behind us, and like the whole church kind of knew who we were, and went to, healing services, healing masses, anointing us sick, and all these things that are really a big part of our faith. And he just kept plugging away. We were told, one more story, I was outside of Averly's dance class in downtown Salem, and I got a call from his cardiologist. And his cardiologist says he has pulmonary vein stenosis. So that's the thing that the old people seem to get and tends to kill them, unfortunately. They have to do angioplasties. They insert a balloon, they stretch it. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And he says, not good. So once again, I got another not good. So like, there's not really a cause for it. There's not really a cure for it. There's not really anything they can do. If they stretch the veins too many times, they callus over, and you can't do anything about it. You can't do transplants. It's not really great drugs for it. So Jason went into research mode. We found a hospital in Boston that was kind of going to be our backup. Like, we were looking to move to Boston if we had to. And then my prayer was always that one day York would go to a cardiology appointment. He still sees a cardiologist. And they would say, we have no sign of pulmonary vein stenosis. And we actually just got that appointment about 6 months ago.
No kidding.
Yep. So that was my very specific prayer, is that there would be no sign of pulmonary vein stenosis. So we got a new cardiologist here in Florida, which I know you want to know how we got here. And so we got a referral from a previous cardiologist who, again, was a saint, Dr. Kelly at OHSU. Love him to pieces. And we got referred here. Another small weird tie-in. So I told you I worked for a payroll company.
Yeah.
That gentleman, Tom Golisano, who founded Paychecks, is actually the financial patron of the children's hospital that we now go to here.
No way.
Isn't that wild?
So that's what took you guys to Florida. That's why you guys packed up and moved to Florida.
But it's actually not.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
That's a weird, coincidence, but
yeah,
I think as believers, it's more than a coincidence. It's a bit of truly divine intervention. We moved to Florida, so you might have heard of a little thing that happened in 2020.
Little thing called COVID, maybe? Yeah.
One of those things.
Yeah. Something like that.
So Averly was finishing up her 4th grade year. Queen of Peace, amazing school.
Yeah.
The school ended about April that year. And she went home for the year. And in my wildest dreams, I never thought that they wouldn't start back up school again. And, I don't know if you want to go, I did not personally want my child in a mask 8 hours a day at school.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And I we were between a rock and a hard place. I think everybody was.
Yes.
So when the school year started up again, and there was the plexiglass dividers, and there was the masks, and there was I was like, we're not doing that for a year. So we did the Zoom school, but unfortunately, the Zoom option through the school system was 1 hour a day, 4 days a week.
Wow.
So he really was at home with me while I worked from home. And she would have school for 1 hour a day, 4 days a week, and the learning just disintegrated.
Yeah.
The social impacts were massive. My happy-go-lucky, chipper, like friend-making girl was a mess. She was a puddle most days. She was frustrated. She just like academically, emotionally, everything. And so we went through a whole nother year of that. And it was about November of 21. And my husband and I were on the same page. We said, enough. There are states that are open. There are states that are kids are in school. There are states where they'll let it be the parent's choice of what's truly in the best interest of the child. Let's go there. And so we looked at Idaho. Idaho, surprisingly, was not as open as it seemed, at least not Boise area. But Florida was. And so we picked Florida on a dime. We bought our house, brand new construction, sight unseen, and just said, that one, let's go.
Love it.
And so that was it. That was the reason. It was honestly in the best interest of our children, and no looking back. Like her school's great. We came here, and there's just a totally different vibe than like on all the stuff than Oregon, and it just more aligns with our values and the health of our children.
That's a great story. Well, hey, we're going to wrap up here in just a moment, but what I think I recognize from you, I bet your faith grew a lot during the time of York being born, and seeing your little girl pray, and you pray, and your friends and family pray, and that God does answer prayer. He does it in his own way. Sometimes it's not always what we do pray, but God is real, and I bet your faith grew a lot during that time. It would be
tremendously.
Just a guess.
And we had to pray a lot for God's will to be done, not just what we wanted. Of course, we wanted York to survive and thrive, but every prayer had to be around your will be done. So that was huge for us as a family.
Yeah, letting go and letting God do his thing, which he's the best one to do whatever he's going to do. He's going to do what he's going to do anyway. So good. Well, let's wrap up on a really fun note. That was really heavy, by the way, and people need to hear that story. A lot of people have gone through the same story, and they haven't really expressed it. So thanks for sharing that. Let's wrap up on a fun note. You've been a coach for 6 years at Southwestern Consulting. And I just want to wrap up on, what do you do? What do you love about it? What's your future look like with Southwestern Consulting?
So, you heard my story, selling books door to door. This is now a sister company of that company. We, the collective organization, had been asked time and time again to teach the sales training tools and tactics and techniques and mindset and all that to corporate entities because of what these book kids were learning. And so the amazing idea was born to have actually our own coaching division. And so I joined 6 years ago, and it really felt like a coming back home, because our company culture is really one of collaboration and supporting one another. And, you do reap what you sow, and personal development and personal transformation from the inside out. So I get to be a sales and business and leadership coach.
Wow.
Meaning that the bulk of my job is helping people achieve their goals, their business goals, their financial goals, their family goals. And we have what we call a practitioner model. So we do coach a lot of salespeople and sales leaders and business owners. And so as coaches, our aim is to also practice the principles and the habits and the things that we're working on with our clients. So I sell coaching, and I deliver trainings, and I am a speaker, and I do make phone calls, and I do prospect a lot of my own clients and potential clients. I do recruit, and I do hire people. And so the biggest payback for me, and why I got into coaching several years ago when I did, was for me that there was nothing greater than that feeling that in some way or another, someone said, my life has changed in part because of something you've helped me do. They're doing it. I'm not doing it. It's all them. But the fact that I've seen people, I've seen people double their income. I've seen people get massive promotions. I've seen people have better relationships with their kids and their spouses. And all because they have an outlet, someone to hold them accountable, someone to challenge them, someone to see them through the tough parts of their life and their business and say, okay, like how do we figure it out? How do we move you forward? So I have some clients. I have a couple clients that are on 150 calls with me or 160 calls. So it's around, I don't know, six years from when I started. And I love the impact piece. I just feel like in some small way, I'm giving back to the world.
Yeah. Well, I know, so here's my affiliation with you guys is you guys coached our branch and we did a workshop. It was really cool. I learned a lot from Amy Donaldson, great coach.
Yeah.
She wrote a book also, which is cool. And then she introduced me to you, and apparently you and I should have known each other when you actually lived in Salem, but I don't think I ever met you.
Yeah.
But actually going through a process of deciding I want to go work for Southwestern myself, I have talked with you for a lot here in the last couple months, and you've coached me, which is interesting. And there's one thing you told me that was really interesting was because I'm in the mortgage industry, and so we grind a lot, we make a lot of calls, and we work hard, and blah blah blah. Right? We all do the same thing, but you can do all the things and do it wrong, or you can just do wrong things and get no momentum. But the thing about you is what you said to me was, buddy, there's you, there's the client, and there's God. Everybody has their own part. The only thing we can control is what we do. And I think that really helped me, even 24 years in the mortgage
Yeah.
industry, to getting into coaching is don't worry about it. Just go do the thing you do best and let
Yeah.
the client decide whether we're worth coaching or not. And God does the rest. And
Yep.
that's the part that I liked a lot. It removes a lot of
Yeah.
pressure, by the way, because as salespeople, we carry a lot of pressure to perform, but we don't need to perform. We just need to provide advice, impact, love, that we actually care. And I think that's what I get from you is you're 6 years into this company, but you actually have a longer history with them. I didn't know that. And I think you have
Yeah.
a real passion and you impact me. So that was cool.
Thank you for that. And I got to give credit where credit's due. That's actually from my mentor is Dana Potoff, Ron Alford. But yeah, my business, your business or the client's business, and then there's God's business. And so just praying every day that I have the words to, that God gives me the right words to impact the people that need and want to be impacted, and that they have the ears to hear my message and hear my heart.
Yeah.
And then trying to remove the pressure, especially like you said in sales, and there is a lot of pressure out there on social media. There's a lot of pressure out there, but trying to stay focused, keeping the main thing the main thing.
Ooh, keep the main thing the main thing. Well, hey, we have to wrap up here. I mean, I know we could probably do this literally for 8 hours. This is fun for me. I hope it's fun for you.
Great time.
I hope that your story impacts somebody. It only needs to be one person, but I really believe, and I'll be praying too, that your story impacts somebody. And really enjoyed having you be on here. I know for a fact we'll be having you on here again in the future as we work together. I'm really excited about that, what that journey looks like. I know Southwestern Consulting is based out of Nashville. That is a true story, right?
Yeah. When Nashville was the southwestern part of the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
So 170 years ago, there wasn't much of this left coast where you're sitting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the coast is there, but not as official.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got some deep roots.
Nashville's a cool place to go. We'll see you guys live in January. So I'm excited for that. So, well, hey, we're going to wrap up. Marjorie, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. We thank the Rec for allowing us to be here and hosting this every week. The Rec, I don't know if you know this, is it's a bowling alley, but it's a ministry. They run probably 500. I don't know the number. I'll be lying if I told you. Like, seems like 300 to 500 people come through here a day, and they have business groups here all the time. So if you haven't tried out the Rec before, come visit the Rec, go bowling, and get to know what the Rec stands for. So that's a shout out to them. Anyway, we hope that you'll listen to this podcast and share it with somebody it's going to impact. We desperately want to get the testimonies of these people, specifically Marjorie's on this one here, out to you, the people. And then we'll see you guys next week. So thanks so much. Peace out.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Have an awesome day.
Yeah. Thank you, Marjorie.